We are finally in week 7 of this semester. If you've looked at the schedule, you'll see that in week 8, we'll be doing the midterm. So this is sort of the midway point for the semester. So when you finish this week's assignment, give yourself a pat on the back. You've survived half of the semester. As we look at this week's chapter, Chapter 3B, we're going to talk about salesmanship. Salesmanship is being able to masterfully persuade others to perform in such a way that satisfies your objective, in this case, buying a product. You'll see here that there are 6 steps of salesmanship, or 6 characteristics, and we're going to spend our time looking at those 6 characteristics, or those 6 qualities of salesmanship. The first of these objectives or characteristics is maintain and display a positive and enthusiastic attitude. There's something to be said about the power of the mind. Experts that deal with motivation all agree that the events in our lives are often the result of the type of attitude we maintain. Our thought process do have a direct effect on the outcome of events in which we are a part. If you go into a sale and you think that the customer is not going to buy your product, you're probably not going to sell the product. You also need to remember to smile, because smiles are a perfect example of positive attitudes, and people respond to smiles better. To get better at salesmanship, you should role play successful sales. When you do make a sale, or when you are practicing to make a sale, don't look sloppy, don't smoke, eat, or chew gum. Try to make sure you don't have bad breath. Be on time, and don't forget all the materials that you might need. This is important when you role play as well as when you actually perform a sale. And let me just say here that if you role play a successful sale, it's more likely that when you start into actual sales that you'll know what you're doing and you'll have the confidence to make the sale. I already referenced the thou shalt nots, but they're really important. So let's review those one more time. Thou shalt not look sloppy. You need to make sure that you always are dressed neatly whenever you're going to make a sale. Even in the greenhouse business, there are some things that you can do to look neat. Do not smoke, eat, or chew gum. That's just a kind of a common courtesy. When you're smoking or eating or chewing gum and trying to make a sale, it's more difficult to understand what you say, and it may be a distraction to the customer. Do not have bad breath. Keep mints in your pocket. Brush your teeth regularly. There's nothing worse than being close to someone that has bad breath who keeps talking and talking and talking. Then the fourth thing here, do not be late for appointments. I know a guy who got a contract because he was the only person who showed up on time. And finally, do not forget the materials. Be sure that you have pen, paper, samples, pictures, whatever you're going to use, have those with you, because you want to look like the salesman who is prepared. The second characteristic of good salesmanship is to acquire confidence through education. If you've ever watched someone who was just great at selling products, they made it look easy. They looked confident and relaxed, responsive. This is probably because they knew what they were selling. They knew the product. It's also important that you know the product so that you can answer questions and answer those correctly. If you don't know the answer, you can always look in a manual or keep something handy for questions that you get asked a lot. Or maybe you can go and ask someone else. But if you do go to maybe the boss and ask them the answer to the question, be sure you stay around and listen, because that'll increase your knowledge and you might get that same question later. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see answers should be short, precise, correct, and extraneous information should not be volunteered. For example, if a customer says to you, "What care does this plant require?" a good answer would be, "Keep it moist but not sitting in water, and make sure it gets plenty of light, maybe in a window." You don't want to answer, "Water it once a week and give it good light, and I like to take cuttings on mine and root them in water and keep it near the window and move it." It's too much information, and that may not work in every case. Third, let me say that a good salesman has definite objectives, both long-term and short-term. Those salesmen write down their objectives to make sure that they remember what they're after, and those objectives will usually be measurable, something that they will know when they've achieved it. Review your objectives from time to time, and when you reach one, celebrate, check it off the list, and then refocus. And the last thing on this slide says update is needed, because as your business changes, then your objectives are going to have to change as well. The fourth quality that a good salesman will have is to understand the psychology of a customer. This is a lot easier said than done, and certainly something that I can't completely educate you on in one screen. But there are a few things that I can give you that might help. If you look at the definition of a customer, you might hear someone say it's the most important person in a business. Or the customer is not dependent on us, we are dependent on the customer. They're not an interruption of our work, they're the purpose for it. They do us a favor if they call. They're part of our business. They're not static, they have feelings and emotions. We should never argue with them. They're the person who brings us our wants and expects us to fix them. They're the person who deserves the most courteous and attentive treatment. They're the person who makes it possible to pay my salary. They're the lifeblood of a business, and they like the company whose employees actively support community affairs. So when you take those things into consideration, you need to remember that no matter how difficult your day is, the customer is the person that you're there for. So in effective selling, you start out by greeting the customer, saying hello. If you only smile at them and just say, hey, we're glad you're here, that goes a long way in making a sale. Then secondly, you immediately want to ask them if there's something that they need help with, or if they'd just like to browse through the store. If you can, and they tell you something that they need help with, get that help immediately. Otherwise, leave them alone and let them look. Thirdly, it's not necessary to badger a customer to determine his or her needs, and often that's a turn-off. Just make sure that you make yourself available. So if you're working in a greenhouse and someone comes in and you say, hi, can I help you? And they say, no, I just want to look. You don't have to ask them again, but you might want to move closer to the area of the greenhouse that they are in and work in that area for a while if they seem to be having trouble. That way, if they do want to ask you a question, you're available. Then always be sure that you listen. Listen to their concerns. Listen to the objections or complaints they have, and do what you can to resolve those comments that they make to you. And then you want to read body language. Favorable body languages are things that mean they're in agreement with you, or that they're a happy customer, is if they make frequent eye contact, or maybe occasionally nod their head, or they have smiles. Negative reactions are usually when people make little eye contact, or they don't smile, or they continue to look off while you're talking to them, or they cross their legs and shift their weight. In that case, they probably are not a happy customer, and you probably need to figure out what's going on to help them. Maybe you need to listen more, or maybe you just need to kind of back off and offer, well, I'll be available if you need me. If a customer is talking to you and they're asking for your opinion about a purchase they're about to make, you always want to make positive comments about what they're buying. You might say, oh, that's a really nice gloxinia you have there, or that's a really beautiful color on that petunia. Reinforce that they are making a good decision. And then you want to avoid questions that could result in a no answer. For example, if a customer says, I would like a plant to take to someone in the hospital, you don't want to say to them, well, how about a hydrangea? Because they may say no and walk off. Instead, you might want to say, well, we have some hydrangeas, or we have some hibiscus, or we have some nice flower gardens at the front. Which one would you prefer? In that case, you've given options, but you've not given them an easy way out, an easy no. And when you do this, we call that suggestive selling. In other words, recommending things to people that they maybe haven't thought of before. Another form of suggestive selling, and probably the most common form of suggestive selling, is if a customer comes to your garden center and they buy plants. As they're checking out, you might recommend fertilizers or insecticides or media, or have moisture meters or tools available at checkout. Kind of like convenience stores have candy bars at the checkout. You probably didn't come in for a candy bar, but since it's there, you may pick it up. Once you have met what you think is the customer's needs, then you need to start leading to the close. In other words, you have fulfilled what they told you their objective was, and it's time to close the sale and make the sale. In making the close, you need to be sure that you have considered everything that they have told you. One way that you might make the close is to say, which one of these do you prefer? Or when would you like this item shipped? After the customer agrees to make the purchase, then you want to come back and say something that encourages them that they made the right decision. You want to reinforce that purchase. So if you were to say, would you like this item shipped? And they say, yeah, I think I'll take this box of pansies. At that moment, they have made the sale. So after the sale, you should say something like, I think you're really going to be happy with this purchase. Or, I like that you chose the red pansies. Not that there are red pansies, but I like that you chose the red pansies because I think those will complement the color that you told me you had in your garden. Whatever the case may be, you always want to reinforce what they have purchased. And then your final step is to say thank you, which is just common courtesy. By March 9th at midnight, you want to complete the 3B handout. But the assignment for this week is going to be a role play of a greenhouse sale, and you're going to need to video yourself making a sale to a customer. Be sure that the person that you choose as your customer agrees to making the video, and they know that you're going to submit this for a class assignment. It will not go beyond the class assignment. I will not put it on YouTube or use it for other classes. I just need to see that you can appropriately make a sale. If you have a hard time getting some kind of recorder, you can use a phone or an iPad or a video recorder. But if you have trouble getting that, if you'll let me know, we'll try to make arrangements. But be sure that you do that early enough in the week that we can make those arrangements and get the assignment due in time or turned in time. Thanks, and have a great week.